should get united. Like, what we gotta do is meet everybody on 149th Street at the bench.
Welcome back to the Arts Block, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, John Grimm. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about something that makes absolutely no sense called anti-style. So there's been this movement, this new style that popped up, and everyone's like, oh my god, anti-style, that's what I do now. Understand, this is the dumbest shit to ever hit graffiti. The whole point behind anti-style is to take style out of the equation, hence anti-style. But there's a massive issue with this. The issue with this is it's not lacking style. Instead, the graffiti artists are stripping away something else. What is it, you ask? Fundamentals. That's what they're stripping away. The graffiti artists are taking away letter structure from the letters and instead compensating for that by adding more style. So why the hell is it called anti-style if they're adding more style? It makes absolutely no damn sense. Look, man, I'm trying to have an intelligent conversation about this, but this is the dumbest shit. Another massive issue with this style called anti-style, it shares a massive resemblance to old school graffiti. Now understand, back in the days, they never called that anti-style. They just said they were rocking straight letters, pieces, or wild styles. Those were the only three things. Now back then, graffiti was still in its infancy, so style was not as developed. The fundamentals weren't as known. As a result, you had a lack of letter structure, which they compensated for by adding style, which is the exact same thing anti-style does. So the quality result, and even some aesthetic results that anti-style gets you, can also be seen in old school graffiti. So if anything, it shouldn't be called anti-style, it should just be you trying to do an old school style because that's what it most closely resembles. Not saying that the people doing anti-style are even succeeding to do old school styles, but at least it resembles it more closely. The whole entire name, anti-style, is dumb as shit because it's not anti anything else other than fundamentals. It's also called ignorant style, which is much more accurate for what it is, because you are knowingly disregarding the fundamentals of letters themselves and compensating for that lack of knowledge by adding style. Now, with all that said, if you get an artist who understands the fundamentals of graffiti and you get them to do anti-style or ignorant style, then that is much more similar to a realistic artist doing abstract art. There still is fundamentals in play in abstract art. With cubism, with abstract expressionism, there's fundamentals at play, whether it's color composition, composition in general, or color theory. The same thing applies here. There's still negative space management, there's still letter structure to some degree, there's still flow, and there's still name and letter weight, as well as color theory. So if you were to get someone like Roscoe, Pose, or any of those guys in order to do an anti-style, then that would be a different story. So when you look at it that way, the real issue with anti-style is more just the naming of that style, and then the kind of culture that it brought up along with it, with newer graffiti artists really taking to anti-style as an excuse to not learn the fundamentals. That's really the issue with anti-style. And if anything, that's really the only issue with anti-style, because there is potential for the visual aesthetics of anti-style to become its own branch of graffiti. But in order for that to happen, you'd have to have credible, knowledgeable, really skilled graffiti artists be the pioneers of that new art form. But let's be honest, that's not gonna happen, and as a result, this whole entire anti-style thing is fucking dumb as shit. It's stupid. Oh my god. That's it. I can't talk about this without cursing much more. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it. Absolutely demolish that like button. And for those guys who are new here, we come out with weekly art content, and I feel it's necessary to say this, but this is not a graffiti channel, but sometimes I will talk about that shit. So if you're gonna subscribe just for graffiti, I don't recommend it, but sometimes we come out with graffiti content. I'll catch you guys in the next video, but until then, peace. Ladies and gentlemen, I got quite emotional during this discussion, so let me just go ahead and say, in a nutshell, once again, the issue with anti-style is simply just the naming of it and the fact that it looks way too similar to old school graffiti because it lacks letter structure and compensates with style, which is exactly what old school graffiti artists did. Those are the issues with anti-style. There goes the whole video in a nutshell. If you like, you can always click these videos on the side if you want to enjoy more art content. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.